So we have spent the last 4 Sabbaths in Romans chapter 13 talking about the relationship of Christian people, God, Jesus following people, to government. And Paul makes very clear that God's in charge, everything is under him. All government is under him. The word is under, not from, in the Greek. Whether they like it or not, agree with it or not, all government is under him. And we're under that. So we're under government under God. We should be model citizens. And we noted Paul didn't give us any outs. He didn't say, unless you don't like the law or whatever. But Peter did, remember, Acts 5, we've talked about this. You must obey God rather than man. So at the close of last week, I shared something that I want to use to launch into today. There are 4 ways we can look at laws. They're the ones that we agree with that make sense to us, like stop signs, don't steal, don't murder. We don't generally have any problem with those. There are laws that we don't like, but they're not morally wrong, like maybe taxes and regulations and those kind of red tape and things that annoy us, cost us money. There are laws that we actually believe are morally wrong, but do not require our personal participation. And on that, I suggested such things as legalized marijuana for recreational usage. I think that's an immoral law, but I don't have to go buy a joint and smoke it. I can leave that alone. Or same-sex marriage. I can choose whether or not I participate. Or the subject of abortion. We voted that legally here in Arizona last November 5 by a 2/3 majority. I personally, I'm not going to tell you what I voted on anything else, but I can guarantee I voted no on that one. But I'm not required to be involved necessarily in performing abortions. So there's these laws that we disagree with maybe, but we're not required to be involved. The 4th category is the ones where human law, in order to keep the human law, we have to break God's law. In order to keep God's law, we have to break the human law. And that seems to be where the exception comes in to our being model citizens. It's time for civil disobedience when they build an image and say bow or burn, or you pray only to the king, or you go to the lion's den. I don't think we have any of those here in our country right now where our life is on the line for following Jesus. There are places in the world that we do. But there are consequences. People have lost their jobs in healthcare because they refused to participate in abortion. People who had their careers ended and lives ruined because they wouldn't take a COVID shot because they thought it was immoral either for their health or because of fetal tissue. I could give other examples, but I'm going to be very short on this. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on number 3. I've invited some guests in today. Last November, after Arizona voted the constitutional amendment that made abortion legal for any or almost no reason right up to birth, I was contemplating, what do we do about this? We have not been a church that's been activist in some of these areas, but what do we do? How do we respond? Do we just ignore it? Do we step in? What do we do? And I got an invitation, I think it was December 8, to go to a presentation where various churches were called together to say, where do we go now? It's now post-political. We're not arguing whether it ought to be voted in. It's in. What do we do about it? How do we respond as a church? And there was a presentation by an outfit called Choices, which I was incredibly impressed with their ministry, their methods, their motives, their attitudes, their compassion. And so I invited their CEO and president, Mark Burmich, I always get that backwards, Burmich, to breakfast. A few days later, we talked for a couple hours. I had him come to staff meeting in, I believe it was April, and we set a date for September 13 for them to come and present some concepts on how as a church we would interface with now the post-political abortion issue and what our role might be. And so I'm excited to have Mark here, and Lorraine Robbins is also going to be presenting a bit. And they're going to share with us some stuff that I think you're going to be really glad you were here to hear it today. So I'm going to let us switch over the slides now. I'm going to invite Mark Burmich. Mark Burmich, please come and share with us. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
That's just step right back up there.
It's a test. All right. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. I'm going to stand back here a little bit. So, as the pastor just mentioned, I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of an amazing organization called Choices Pregnancy Centers. And we are a pro-life, Christ-centered organization here in town. And we operate and exist to help men and women facing unplanned pregnancies. I'm biased. I happen to think it's a great ministry. But today, we're not going to be talking a whole lot necessarily about choices. And this is not going to be a sanctity of human life sermon. What we're here to do today is we're here to, no matter where you're at on the abortion pro-life issue, and I know there's a spectrum. I speak at churches all the time. No matter where you're at, we're going to present to you real, non-anecdotal commentary of the almost 300,000 clients that we've seen over the past 42 years. And I want to help if there's any stereotypes, stigmas, dogmas in this room around this issue. I want to, at the end of the day, I hope, have you leave here with a little more information and a different perspective about this life issue than when you came in today. And I also want to, at the very end, as I define success for today, is I want to encourage the church. All roads lead back to the church in this life issue. There is no substitute. And the church, as the body of believers, has within it the greatest power to impact the most cultural change over any organization in the world. I know I've seen it firsthand every single day. So, I'm going to take this step by step by step. We're going to build layers, if you will, kind of like building a cake. And I want to start at the very beginning, and it's right here. Now, this very pixelated black circle you can see on the screen, I hope you can see that. That is an unfertilized human egg. Scientists at Northwestern University were able to conduct an experiment. They were able to actually put this under a microscope. This is 1,000 times magnification. And they were able to record the exact moment of fertilization and conception, and this is what it looks like. It is an actual burst of light that emanates from the egg. It is with that spark of life that we talk about. Now, this is under a controlled experiment, but this is what they were able to capture. And at this exact moment, life begins. Mom DNA come in, dad DNA come in, and they start to produce life, right? And this is the knitting together in the womb that takes place. And here's some high-level things I want to share with you. At 21 days in, after fertilization, the baby's heart begins to beat. And if you've seen an ultrasound, whether your children, your grandchildren, you know seeing the heartbeat on the ultrasound is the most incredible thing in the world. I can still remember seeing my daughter's heartbeat for the very first time on the ultrasound. At 6 weeks in, the entire brain and spinal cord are now formed. At 7 weeks in, the baby is now making its own blood, oftentimes a different blood type than the mother's. At 8 weeks in, the baby can move its trunk and its limbs. And at 9 weeks, the nose and the ears are now visible. At 10 weeks, 25,000 brain cells are formed every single minute. The rate of cellular reproduction during development is something that we really can't fully comprehend. It's something that science can tell us is happening, but they can't tell you why it's happening. And consider for a moment, at the moment of fertilization, cell reproduction happens. There's trillions and trillions of cells that are being produced. And the incredible thing is that there's some grand architecture, we know who it is, telling these cells, you cells, you're going to be the brain. You cells, you're going to be fingernails and toenails. You cells, you're going to be eyeballs, and it's the coming together. This is how it works. At 11 weeks, the baby now has all of its major organs. And at 14 weeks, the baby can suck its own thumb, and the toenails are now, and thumbnails are now visible. And from this moment on, from 14 weeks on, for the next 26 weeks of pregnancy, all that baby is going to do is simply just grow and get bigger. That's it. And what we end up with a guy like this. This is a 3rd trimester ultrasound. That's the baby in the womb. This guy is itching to get out. He's stretching. He's having a good time. It's sped up just a little bit, but yikes, I'm glad I'm not mom there. I start there at this foundation because that is the foundation. That's life in the womb. That's God creating life. This is what is spoken about in Psalms, knitting together in the womb. Now, we're going to do a hard right, and we're going to go to our second layer, and it's this. What are the laws in Arizona today regarding abortion? Whether or not you care to know, it's important that we do know as citizens of this state so we can speak into what's actually happening. Now, to understand where we're at today in Arizona, we have to go back to 1973. In 1973, the United States Supreme Court heard the case Roe v. Wade. At a very high level, here's what it stated. All abortions are allowed in the first trimester, limited abortions in the second trimester, very little to no abortions in the third trimester. That became Roe. It was passed by the Supreme Court, and that was the law of the land for about 50 years. Fast forward to 2022. The same United States Supreme Court heard the Dobbs case. I won't go into it, it's not relevant. But Justice Alito on the United States Supreme Court, he said, I don't think we have the right as the Supreme Court to determine when life begins. He's right, they don't. And it got sent back down to the states where it's always belonged. All that culminated in November of last year with the passing of Proposition 139, which the pastor just talked about. And so it's here that I want to share with you what exactly is 139. Before I do, I always ask this question, by show of hands, when you went to vote last November, how many of you were aware of Proposition 139? Okay. When you went to vote, how many of you thought you fully understood everything that 139 encompassed? That's a very common response. So I'm going to break it down for you real quickly. It's very simple. I've broken it down to 3 easy chunks. The first is illegal, and here's what it says. Proposition 139 states that abortion is now an Arizona constitutionally protected state right up to the point of fetal viability. Very important. Most people read that, they stopped there, and they thought, okay, this is like a common sense abortion law. I'll go ahead and agree to that. The next part is what I call the switch. That is short for bait and switch. Because if you read the next part in Proposition 139, it nullifies the first part. It goes on to say that a healthcare professional can determine that an abortion is necessary if it's causing mental, physical, or emotional harm to the mother through any point in the pregnancy. So we just nullified the first part. Notice I didn't say doctor, I didn't say physician, obstetrician, I said a healthcare professional. That's how 139 is written. It is nebulous by design. That can be a chiropractor writing a note, that can be a podiatrist, that can be a dermatologist, that can be anybody. Last is the lawfare component, very important. It states in 139 that law enforcement and the courts are prohibited from interfering from these abortions. Very important for abortionists. They want to make sure they're not going to get sued, arrested, lose their licenses, or go to jail if they're committing these abortions. Now that's everything that you were told about 139. Here's the fallout of 139, the things you were not told. The first part is the pill. That is short for the abortion pill. One more time I'll ask, how many of you have heard of the abortion pill, at-home abortion, DIY? Okay. The pill itself is every bit a paradigm shift in the abortion space. Hear me very clearly. More abortions have happened since the overturning of Roe than before, and it's because of the abortion pill. It accounts for 64% of all abortions today in the United States of America. It's incredibly dangerous in how it is actually marketed to young women. It's marketed as birth control. In fact, one of the major advocates that push the abortion pill on their website say, and I quote, "It's safer than Tylenol," end quote. The danger with how this is marketed is that when this woman, I won't go into all the details now, you can catch me afterwards if you want to hear it, but when she takes that abortion pill, the symptoms from the abortion pill are indistinguishable from if she's having a dangerous ectopic pregnancy. But nowhere in the process is she told to go see a doctor. And because she's not seeing a doctor, we're seeing catastrophic results happen because most of these women take these pills at home alone and in secret. The fallout from 139, the abortion pill is going to explode in the state of Arizona. And you can quote me today, if this goes on long enough, the abortion pill will be administered by school nurses on school campuses to your daughters, and they will not have to tell you about it. The next is the traffic component. That's short for human trafficking. Going back to what we just talked about. Remember how the courts can't interfere, law enforcement can't interfere with these abortions? And remember how anybody can basically, at any point in the pregnancy, recommend that an abortion is necessary? What we've done effectively is we have created a revolving door, get out of jail free card for individuals that traffic young women. They can come to Arizona, they can get the abortion, they can take them right back out and put them right back into prostitution again. This is going to skyrocket as a result of 139. The last piece is what I call the governmental piece. I don't typically talk about parties or candidates, but I will always give you objective truth. The objective truth is the Arizona State Attorney General does not like places like Choices Pregnancy Centers. In March of last year, she created something called the Reproductive Rights Unit. Under that unit, she issued a consumer alert telling people in Arizona to stay away from places like Choices. She said, we lie, we use false advertising, we coerce, we have no doctors, we're only staffed by volunteers. All of it was a blatant lie, but it didn't matter because everybody read it and didn't fact check it. She even went so far as to say some of these organizations actually use the word choice in their name. Imagine that. As a result of 139, what's going to happen is that the government is going to ratchet things down and make it harder and harder and harder for places like us to stay in operation and in business. And the next thing that the local government is going to come after is parental consent. They're going to go after parental consent, and they're going to make it so that if your daughter who's underage wants to get an abortion, you don't have to be notified. And if she asks for the abortion pill, you don't have to be notified. And we know that's happening. It's going to happen because that's what's happened in other states where similar propositions have already passed. Now, I realize I just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. This is not great information, but this is where things are today. I want to be completely candid with you. But it's also here that I want to give you some good news, and I want to introduce you to my organization, which is Choices Pregnancy Centers. Very simply, Choices Pregnancy Centers is Arizona's largest, longest-running, pro-life, Christ-centered pregnancy resource group. We've been in operation for 42 years. We have seen over 285,000 clients come through our center doors. If you've ever been to the Phoenix Sun Stadium, that's like filling the stadium 14 and a half times to give you perspective on how many clients we've been able to see. Because of the work of Choices, we've been able to save the lives of about 11,000 babies from abortion. And we are unapologetically Christ-centered. When we sit down with our clients, we'll often have conversations with them, spiritual conversations. We'll offer to pray with them, and we'll offer to share the gospel with them. And because of that, we've seen over 2,500 people come to accept Jesus inside of our centers. Now, we have locations in Glendale, North Phoenix at 19th Avenue and Camelback Road, on the campus of North Phoenix Church through their Hope Center program, a brand new 11,000 square foot space in Mesa, and we just launched our mobile unit that serves in Casa Grande and in Buckeye. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the main services that we offer at Choices. We offer pregnancy tests and free ultrasounds. Everything that we offer to our clients is 100% free. We are 100% donor funded. We take no federal money of any kind. Very important. We offer options counseling. These are conversations about alternatives to abortion, like adoption. STD testing, education programs. This is everything from parenting education programs on how to be a mom, how to be a dad, how to manage your finances, how to build a resume, all the way to our nurse-led classes on what to expect during pregnancy, what is delivery going to look like, how to set up cribs, how to set up car seats. We also have post-abortive recovery care, one of the most important programs that we offer, and I'm going to have Lorraine Robbins talk about that in a moment. And in each one of our centers, we have what we call boutiques. These are actual storefronts that have everything in them from formula, wipes, diapers, cribs, car seats, onesies, everything parents are going to need. They can get those items 100% for free just by taking our parenting education classes. That at a high level is what we offer at Choices. So we are a ministry operating in the mission field created by unplanned pregnancy, not by abortion. Abortion is a possible inevitability, but it's not what happens every time. We're there to intersect when mom and dad think, oh no, I might be pregnant. That's our intersection point with these clients when we come in, and that's what we get to do every single day. Notice in here I didn't list any of our services. That's not really what we're about. The services are tools, but this is what we are here to do, to be a ministry to these women coming in. So now we're going to pivot to arguably one of the most important segments today. And if you get nothing else out of today, I hope you pay attention here. How do we at Choices see and perceive the abortion issue? Now for this next part, it's important that we understand worldview. Everybody in the world has a worldview. I have a biblical worldview. How I view the world around me is filtered through the Word of God. That's how I view life, how I view death, how I view sin, how I view sexuality, how I view sanctity of human life. Everything is through a biblical worldview. And if we don't have a biblical worldview when we look at the topic of abortion, we will miss it entirely. So how do we at Choices view this very complicated, nuanced issue? At its very essence, we view it as a spiritual heart issue, full stop. Stay with me. This is not how we see it play out in popular culture, though, is it? We see it play out in popular culture like this. We see it play out as a healthcare issue. How many times have you been told or heard that abortion is healthcare? All the time. How about a political issue? Every season it becomes a political issue. Even when it's not political, people think it's political, right? Each party takes it, they leverage it, it becomes a political football. It's a rights issue. It's her right to choose, right? It's a choice issue. It's her body, it's her choice. To deny her that access is to deny her right to health care. It's a socioeconomic issue. We see this all the time at Choices. Mom and dad may want to keep the baby, but financially they just can't make it happen. It's a community failure issue. We see this a lot at Choices as well. Mom and dad may want to keep the baby, but there's no family, there's no community, there's no friends, there's no church to surround them, and so keeping the child is no longer viable to them. The last is an upward mobility issue. This is unfortunately something we see as well, which is mom and or dad may be at a job, they need to get promoted, they need to finish school. And so all of these things come together to deter them from keeping that child. This is not an exhaustive list, by the way. For all of these that we've created, we could create an infinite number more. And if you've ever wondered why the abortion issue is so divisive, so polarizing, and so hard to wrap your arms around, this is why. It is complicated by design. Since we know what the issue is at Choices, and this is how we see the issue, we have a very simple response for it, and it's this right here. Our response at Choices is to show unconditional love all the time, provide education, support, and hope, and to point clients to a one true hope in a broken world and see lives transformed and saved through relationship with Jesus Christ. That's it. It really is that simple. And again, notice there's no services listed in there. The services are simply tools to do this right here. We see real transformation happen every single day. It's what we call greater love. Let me make a very clear distinction, and I'm going to date myself. This is not the greater love, this is not the Beatles version of love. This is Jesus' version of love. Beatles' version of love, as I like to coin it, this is not do what you want, when you want, with whomever you want, be as debaucherous as you want, and we'll just slap the label of love on it and we all have to celebrate it. No. This is Jesus' love when we talk about greater love. What is the hallmark of the love of Jesus? We see it all throughout the New Testament, his life here on earth. It's forgiveness, unconditional forgiveness. But what else? It's corrective. It's the truth. It's stop doing what is hurting you. I care about you and I love you and I want to help you. That's the greater love of Jesus. Because we see our clients in this light, we don't point the finger, we don't judge, we don't bring our clients in and lock the door and say, you're not leaving if you don't choose life. We're here to bring our clients in, give them a moment to relax, take a deep breath, get information, get resources, but then also get a chance to pour into them about the love of Jesus that can help them throughout the rest of their lives. Now, the greater love of Jesus is on no better and greater display than inside of our post-abortive recovery care program. And it's here that I'm going to ask Lorraine Robbins, who is our senior center director, to come up and speak into this. Lorraine has been with the organization over 20 years. She's seen it, she's done it, she has the t-shirt, as they say. So Lorraine, please.
Good morning. It's such a privilege to be here. Thank you so much, Pastor, for allowing us to come, because we want the world to know, we want Arizona to know what we're doing at Choices. I have been with the ministry for 22 years. I started 1 year as a volunteer, and I fell in love with this ministry. What a privilege it is to sit and talk with these women that walk in. They're looking to have an abortion and to be able just to educate them. Our job isn't to tell them what to do. That's not our job. God gave us all free will, but to educate them. We want them to know that if they choose abortion, they can walk right back into our doors, and we will love on them, and we will offer them the program of post-abortion recovery. You see, I know personally what these women are facing. 47 years ago, I had an abortion. I thought pushing that button of abortion would make my life easy. Nobody's going to know, right? Nobody will ever know that I had an abortion. But that's not the truth. Because see, when you push that button of abortion, you don't realize the regret, the shame, the sadness, the depression, all of that comes on you after you have that abortion. And so when these women come into our ministry, we're able to sit and just educate them on what does abortion really look like. I think it's so important. That's why we see such a high number of changes to carry, because they get to hear truth from us. They get to see that abortion doesn't have to be their only option. We have the option of adoption, of parenting. We have great resources that we can come alongside of them. When I made that decision 47 years ago of having an abortion, I didn't know that I would walk down a culture of death. And so me in this, God has brought me to this ministry 22 years ago to be healed from my past abortion. See, through this ministry and through going through, we use Surrendering the Secret. And we learned that we can memorialize that life that was taken through abortion. We can learn that that baby is in heaven. I know now with the assurance that one day I'm going to see my daughter again. I'm going to be able to spend eternity with her. And through that, we get to name our babies. So post-abortion recovery is an amazing journey that these women that come through our doors. I can tell you I worked 5 years in just solely post-abortion recovery. And the heartbreak that I seen through these women that had the abortion and they came back to us, or they found us in the community, they were devastated. They talked about how they can't sleep at night. You know, a lot of times women will choose abortion because they've gotten a scholarship to high school. They have a brand new career. They don't want to disappoint their family. The boyfriend is saying, make this decision, have an abortion. We'll have children later. When these women make this decision, that changes everything in their life. I know personally my life was changed until I was able 22 years to come into this ministry and be healed from my past abortion. I can tell you now that I have no more of the sadness, the regret, the shame that's so incredible. Because see, we're told we want to keep that secret. We don't want anybody to know we had an abortion because we're so afraid that judgment will come upon us, that people will think we're a horrible person. So through this program, they get to be released from all of that. They get to see that God loves them. He cares for them. He has a plan for their lives. I'm so grateful that God has used my story to bring me full circle, that now I get to sit in the ministry. I get to sit at 19th Avenue and Camelback, and I get to talk about this journey that I've been through, how God has taken me through healing. No longer do I have those shackles of shame and regret. Will I one day see my daughter? Yes, I will. And I can't wait for that day to come. And I know he's coming back for us and that we'll be able to do that. But through this program, we no longer look at the decision we made as an abortion. We look at it as our baby. So I just want to say, you know, there may be somebody here that you know that has had an abortion in their past. Let them know they can walk in our doors any day. They can call. We have literature at that back table that can help women understand that they don't have to live in that shame and secrecy any longer. I'm so grateful that I can stand before you today and say that I'm not ashamed and that God is using this for his glory. And so post-abortion recovery is just an amazing thing that we get to offer our clients, the community, the churches. And 47 years ago, when I made the decision, I thought my life was over and that I never was going to tell this secret ever. But I'm so glad that God has a different way, a different path that we get to walk. So I will be here after service, and if you have questions or concerns, or you know somebody and you want to get them involved in what post-abortion recovery is about, please don't hesitate. Thank you so much.
So I want to take a hard right turn. We're going to go to another layer in this conversation, and there's no easy way to segue into it. Believe me, I've tried many times, so I'm not going to bother. We're just going to jump into politics. We're not going to talk about parties, we're not going to talk about candidates, but here's what I want you to understand. There's a unique attribute to politics, and here's what it is. Whenever you add politics to anything, you get one thing and one thing only, and that's more politics. When we add politics to education, do we get better education? What happened when we added politics to science and medicine? Did we get better science and medicine? No. Unfortunately, the abortion issue is no different. And so what's happened is abortion and politics have become like intrinsically fused together, and you can no longer separate them in culture and society today. Here's the danger with that. Politics removes life-saving conversation and services from taking place, and here's why. People see it as a political issue and they recoil and they go, I don't want to talk about that. Or I know I need to discuss that, or I need to provide solutions or resources for that, but I think it's too political. I don't want to alienate people, and so they recoil as a result. That's what's happening in our culture and society today. And what happens when politics overtakes abortion? They strip it from humanity. At a minimum, abortion affects a mom and a father and a preborn child. When it becomes a political, it becomes stripped of that, and it becomes an abstract. It becomes a political football that's tossed back and forth, candidate to candidate, party to party, and it becomes leveraged in that way. And it is detrimental as a result, because now in culture today, if you ask people about abortion, 9 out of 10 times they will tell you they think it is a political issue and they don't want to talk about it. Or if they do, there's so much vitriol and anger behind it because they see it as a political issue. The political issue, the reason I bring that up is to bring awareness about it, but it's also a springboard for the last segment, which is what does success look like? And the reason I use politics before this and why it's a springboard is because we as the church, the body of believers, have the ability to transcend politics. We have the ability as the body of believers to come together and provide hope and education and resources and no condemnation and no judgment, and transform people's lives. No other organization or entity on the planet, government or otherwise, can do what the church can do, period. I'm going to give you an illustration. It's called the blessers versus the converters. Some of you may know this. If not, it'll be new for you. There's a gentleman by the name of Mark Lowry Russell. He holds a PhD. As part of his doctoral thesis, he followed a group of ministry-run organizations that were going to go do missions trips in Thailand for 2 years. He took a look at all of these organizations and he broke down their mission statements and put them into 2 main buckets: blessers, converters. Here's how he broke it down. All of these organizations that he called blessers, their stated intent was to go to Thailand for 2 years and bless anybody that came in their path. Vocational, education, job, building a house, you name it. The other group, the converters, their stated intent was to go and convert people to Jesus Christ. They go out for 2 years, they come back. Mark Lowry conducts 148 interviews with all of these organizations. He compiles the data. He starts with the blessers. He says, did you bless people that you came in contact with? He looked at all the information. He said, yep, I can quantify the fact that you blessed everybody that you came in contact with. He asked the same question to the converters. His synopsis was, I really can't tell that you blessed anybody. Then he asked the converters, okay, your stated intent was to convert people to Jesus Christ. How many conversions did you have in 2 years? 2. He goes back to the blessers and he says, I know this wasn't your stated intent, but by the way, how many conversions did you have? 96. I highlight this because this is what the church can do, and we as the body of believers can do to change this narrative and to help people in our society. We can become blessers. It's simply not enough to tell people about abortion. It's simply not enough to provide resources or education. We have to step up and provide that. We have to be a safe space for that. If every church and every body of believers were to spread the word throughout their neighborhoods and their communities that if you're caught in an unplanned pregnancy or that you've had an abortion, you can come in, no condemnation. We want to help you. We want to help you find resources. We want you to have forgiveness. It would fundamentally change the conversation overnight. And it's here that I want to introduce you to a man named Gustavo. His full name is Gustavo Ochoa. Gustavo is a young man. He was born in central Los Angeles, was in and out of gangs his entire life. He got shot, got his jaw broken, was in juvie, was in prison, turned his life around, moved to Arizona. He and his girlfriend, they find themselves pregnant unexpectedly. She finds Choices Pregnancy Centers at 19th Avenue and Camelback Road. Gustavo is also a student at Arizona State University, and he was given a class assignment to write a report on an organization or an individual that had the greatest impact on his life, and he chose Choices Pregnancy Centers. He reached out to get a hold of me because he wanted to interview me for his report. When I heard his story, I said, time out, buddy, I want to interview you. So here's what he tells me. He says, I didn't want to go to Choices with my girlfriend. And he said, I know what I look like. He's pointing to his body. He's got tattoos everywhere. He said, but when I went into Choices, nobody judged me. Everybody was warm. They were friendly, smiled, helped us. He said, you provided unbelievable free resources, all this education. He said, you gave us all of this free stuff from the boutique. And he said, I had to ask multiple times, are you sure all this stuff is free? He said, I took all of your parenting education classes. I want to go back and take them all again. He said, I actually want to become a facilitator so that I can teach those classes. Keep in mind, Gustavo, at this point, he's not a believer, but his life has been fundamentally transformed. Why? Because a group of blessers who believe in Jesus Christ work in an organization called Choices and get to engage with these individuals and show them unconditional love every single day. Now, Gustavo is an Uber driver. That's how he makes a living. And he said to me, I use my car as a platform to tell people my story. He says, I tell them all about Choices. And he says, I tell them about my beautiful 3-year-old boy that's alive today because of the work of Choices. And after I had gotten done interviewing him, I walked him back to his car and he said, you know, I really feel God has me on a journey right now. It's the first time he ever mentions God in the conversation. And I said, Gustavo, he does have you on a journey. You need to lean into that. And I continue to communicate with Gustavo now, trying to help him, right? Trying to show him greater love on this journey. And so as we wrap up this morning, I want to encourage you, and I want to hit on the final point for success. Whenever I talk, it's always easy to talk about abortion or the sanctity of human life or all the services. That's great. But what does it really mean? How do we actually apply it? How do we implement it? Well, the reality is it starts right here. It doesn't actually start at Choices. It starts with each of you as individuals. And our hope and our prayer, whenever we get an opportunity to share, is that we give you something different. We give you a different perspective, different information. And our prayer is that when you leave here today and you go back out into the workforce next week and you meet friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, and somebody says to you, hey, I found out my daughter's pregnant. I found out my granddaughter's pregnant. That your answer can very simply be, hey, that's okay. My church has an awesome ministry for that. Let me connect you. And that's Choices. We don't want you to think about Choices as just some parachurch organization operating out here. No, it's a partnership. And if every church were to equip themselves to be able to speak intelligently into the issue and to say, hey, if you're facing this challenge or you've actually made this decision, it's okay. We welcome you to come in. No condemnation, no judgment. We're all sinners. And understand that the work of the cross is finite and final. There are no exceptions for sin. If that message resonates out from every church in the valley, we will see lives changed, communities changed, and cultures changed in a way we've never seen before, and it'll happen like gangbusters. That's our hope for today. I'm going to be in the back of the room. Lorraine will be back there. We have a couple of other staff members. We have a bunch of materials and information about what we do at Choices. If you'd like to just have it to keep with you, to give to somebody, we encourage that. If you'd like to learn more, if you want to pepper us with questions, that's what we're here for. Some of you in this audience today, you may agree with what we've said, you may disagree. That's okay. We'd love to talk with you. We want to thank you again for the invitation to be here. I want to thank you for your attention and for the time this morning. Thank you very much.
It seems that the popular world approach to change is to try to make societal change through law, through activism. But I believe Jesus' way for change and Jesus' way of approaching moral issues in our world is one heart at a time. That's the only way the church, I believe, can really effectively change anything. And that is one heart at a time. It's individuals, it's people. That's why we don't get involved in the politics side. I know that I wrote a little paper up and gave you a website you could look at if you wanted to read about it for information on 139 before the vote. I don't know if anybody read it or not. I have no idea. Oh, I knew 2 people did because they talked to me about it, so that's how far that went. But in reality, we live in a world with all kinds of levels of brokenness. There are all kinds of things that are legal in our society that break people. Every sin breaks us. And we not only need forgiveness, we need healing. And I believe as a church, the way we change the world is one heart at a time. It's people. It's people. Yeah, if I get a chance to vote on this again, I know how I'll vote. But in the meantime, do we just check out and do nothing for hurting and broken people? Do we start protesting and yelling against the system? Or do we simply, as Mark has suggested and Lorraine has suggested, it's one heart at a time. We make ourselves available to bless people, recognize needs, provide resources, and do it on a one-to-one basis. Now, I don't know how our church is going to fit into this. I'm not here to suggest that we all sign up and do this, that, or the other thing. But I really appreciated Choice's approach to working with people non-judgmentally, providing good resources, be they spiritual, be they emotional, be they physical, counseling, healing. And so I encourage you to ask God why He had you here today and what He wants for you to do and how you fit into the things that you have heard. There are broken people all around us, and I believe that if we ask God to connect us with people and give us Jesus' heart and attitude, He can make us into life changers to become world changers. And wherever you stand on the subject of abortion is not, well, I think it is important, but that's not my point here today. We can love people in their brokenness, no matter what their brokenness is caused by, whether it's this subject or any of a multitude of others. And I believe Jesus calls us to be lovers of people. We stand with a clear moral agenda. We know what we believe. It's a biblical worldview. We know what we believe about these issues. But we love people. We listen. We direct the resources. We provide. And I like the concept that by blessing we'll make more converts than by trying to convert. I think that's the answer.